Let's start with this headline that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has reportedly been meeting with robotics industry CEOs. What do we know about the nature of these conversations?
Yeah, well, in some ways, this is a long time in the making. So, over the spring, a bunch of robotics companies went to the Hill and they met with Congress people and they showed off their robots and they had a demo day. And, if you were a congressperson around that day, you could have gone outside and seen a Tesla Optimus robot do some tricks for you. So, the robotics industry has been pushing for a little while to have a presence in the policy world and to have some of their policies passed. It seems like what we're hearing now is the culmination of those efforts. So they've gotten through to some people in the administration, and maybe we're going to see some responses to those asks soon, in particular from the Commerce Department. I believe the Politico report also said we could see an executive order on robot policy soon.
Okay, and what sorts of asks have the robotics industry been making?
Money.
Money.
That's a
Okay.
key one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the big asks is always, can we get some funding? Can we get some investment in R&D, both for robotics companies to develop their technology and also potentially funding for their customers? It could come in the form of a tax break. It could be direct funding, but funding to sort of help the customers be a little emboldened and feel confident to adopt robots. A lot of the time it feels like kind of cutting edge technology. They're uncertain about it. It seems like it comes with some risks. So a little bit of funding could go a long way to help them feel more confident in taking those first steps in adopting robots. So funding is a big piece of the puzzle. There could also be a lot of worker training. I think that's a key ask that comes up repeatedly.
Right.
And this also sort of helps respond to potential concerns about robots taking jobs, right? Roboticists also see new jobs being created, and they see jobs that involve working with and creating and maintaining robots playing an increasingly important role in the future. So a key policy ask is often worker training programs, getting into the schools, helping people understand how to work with robots.
And it hits on a good point, because when I think of what DC's involvement in the robotics sector might look like, sure, funding, tax breaks, I mean, this is all part of it. But I actually think some of the policy questions around robotics, similar to the policy questions we're seeing around AI, those are actually the more interesting questions to me, because, look, I mean, we're talking about labor displacement in ways that we may not have seen for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. The comparison with AI is really interesting. I mean, the administration is so interested in AI policy. You saw Trump's AI action plan. And I think the robotics industry recognizes that this is an opportunity for them to kind of piggyback on that interest in AI policy, because robots are physical AI, right? It's the expression of that AI in the physical world. On the other hand, the shape of the policy debate for robotics kind of looks very different from the policy issues we're hearing about in AI. I mean, some of the big issues in AI policy are around what kind of information the leading AI companies have to disclose to the public or to officials, and how do we prevent AI systems from engaging in kind of algorithmic bias and discrimination? That's very different from the kind of industrial policy we're seeing on the robotics side, where we want to just sort of reshore American manufacturing. One thing that's similar is they both have this dynamic of competition with China, though. The administration sort of sees both sectors as important to competing against China, both economically and potentially militarily.
I mean, they want to get out ahead of it, really. Certainly with any of these races, they don't want to lose. The other thing that I was thinking about, which I don't know how significant it is, but look, manufacturing these robots in the long run is going to be something they have to think about, and the parts have to come from somewhere. And if the tariffs are going to affect the parts, then that's going to be an issue. We're not talking about mass producing these robots yet, but at some point that's going to be an issue, I'm sure.
That's a great point. One person put it to me, a robotics person who's involved in this kind of policy work, said their experience with the administration has been a little Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And what they meant by that was, on the one hand, the conditions seem great to have some kind of industrial policy for robotics. There's this competition with China. There's this interest in AI. There's a sense that we want to reshore American manufacturing. And in fact, because of the administration's position on immigration, there's more need for robotic automation than ever, because it's hard to get labor in a lot of these facilities and warehouses and factories. So in some sense, those should be the perfect conditions. The flip side is the tariffs, like you said. I mean, the administration sees the tariffs as kind of stimulating that industrial policy and reshoring, but the tariffs also apply to the components that go into the robots. And a
Right.
lot of roboticists are frustrated by that. It means their costs are going through the roof. It's more expensive than ever for them to actually make these robots. Maybe in the long term, they could also bring, in the US, they could have some kind of manufacturing for the parts. But right now, the supply chain is very distributed, and a lot of it lives in China or otherwise in East Asia. And we're
Hmm.
talking really sophisticated parts, like little motors that are tuned to be just right to work in a robot. And it's going to take a long time to bring that kind of manufacturing back to the US.